consortium that we announced on Friday. And this is a thing that we've been working on for over a year. And I want to tell you about it and why we're doing it and why it's so important for DOE and for the community. So some of you might have heard about the White House's executive order on AI. And one of the items in that executive order aimed at DOE was to charge DOE to go out and build partnerships around building large-scale AI for science and make some of those partnerships international. And we had been working on this, and so we're very happy to see that. So what we decided to do is to create a consortium. It's a consortium that has about 60 members in it so far, and we expect this to grow. And we're really using this consortium to grow a community around the idea of using the world's fastest supercomputers, combining with the large amount of scientific data that the community has been curating over years, and to create, to enable the community to make progress on creating large language models for science and engineering. And so we have exascale platforms. We know that training very large language models on exascale platforms is a non-trivial undertaking. These are at least as big as running climate models for many months on a full exascale machine. And it's an enormous amount of effort to organize data, to build the model architectures, to run them, and to understand what you've created with these models. And rather than having dozens of groups around the world that are all interested in doing this, doing it separately in silos, we decided to form a consortium to bring people together around this opportunity. We originally started working on this last year at a RECON symposium and made further progress on it over the last couple of months, and it's very much aligned with where DOE is heading in AI. So some of you may have seen this talk. I used this slide, I think, earlier this morning in one of the workshops. But the center part of this is what the broad AI community has been thinking about for the last couple of years, right? Building large foundation models by training them on large amounts of data, text, code, and so on across the community, and then adapting those to many downstream tasks. And this is ChatGPT, this is Claude, this is models coming out of the AI industry. But for science, we need to find a way to capture and encode and curate the deep scientific data that's different from the kinds of text and image data that you can just pull off of the web. And ultimately, we want these models to be useful in things like scientific discovery or to help in building digital twins and so forth. So this is kind of what we believe the community is interested in, and the TPC was designed to try to accelerate this. Now, there's lots of groups building models, and some models are open, like the models coming out of Meta, but most of the most powerful models, in fact, are not open at all. And so, not open means two things. It means that the research community does not have access to the weights or the code or the training protocols for building those models. And so there's no way for the research community to actually replicate those results on their own, right? So one of the things that we're interested in here is bringing together groups, not just that are interested in this topic, but have already made decisions to build large-scale language models for scientific work. So at Argonne, we've got a project called Aurora GPT that is moving this direction. At RECON, they have a project called GPT Fugaku, moving this direction. Oak Ridge has a model called Forge, and so forth. There's about 6 or so institutions that have already made forward progress on building such models, and the Trillion Parameter Consortium is really acting as an environment to share experience around that. So of course the mission for TPC is to enable people to build the most powerful foundation models for science, and to do this in a responsible way, and to understand actually how to do that. All right, so not only will there be models created, but there'll be a workforce of young people that have participated in building these models and who understand how to do it, and understand how to do it in a way that is distinct from what the private sector is doing, right? And the TPC is really the vehicle for doing this. And we have really 3 goals in the consortium. So the first goal is an open community. What we mean by open here is that the activities of the community, engagement, is open. People that aren't part of the consortium can see work products and so on, and that that we're not hiding anything. Particularly, we're not hiding the goals, and we're not hiding the purposes of bringing people together. Number two is the consortium is going to be a place where people can learn how to do this. We're going to incubate projects and coordinate loosely. So as you mentioned, there's about 6 or 7 groups internationally that are already moving towards building large models. And what we're realizing is that there's a lot of duplication or a lot of common effort. And the idea of the TPC is to reduce that duplication, right? Avoid unnecessary duplication and maximize the efforts and coordinate. So if some group is doing a set of experiments, say in Japan, we don't have to do the same experiments in the US, or we can do different experiments in France and so forth. The third thing is to create a global network of resources. So there's a lot of people interested over the last 6 months or so as we've been bringing people together. There's over 600 people that are part of our Slack channels, and they're already sharing information, giving informal talks and tutorials and so on to each other and sharing information. So we're making good progress on that. But there's some things that we're not doing. So first of all, this big consortium is not trying to dictate what people are doing. We're also not trying to determine which bilateral or multilateral collaborations happen. We're just trying to create basically a venue for this. We're also not recommending platforms, and we're not allocating time on machines. Centers that are part of this will do their own allocations, and groups will work on their own models. What we are going to do is share experiences, tools, and data where the rules on sharing that data are very clear. We're going to make it easier for people to find things, find each other, and collaborate. It's already having great impact, connecting people across the world. And advocate for best practices. So building responsible models and testing models to see how trustworthy they are needs to happen, and there needs to be a community that understands how to do that. And part of what we're interested in the consortium is actually working through those processes. So some of the activities that we're going to do over the next year or so is some meetups and hackathons, particularly around cleaning data and building data processing pipelines so that we can deduplicate data and so forth. A lot of seminars. Various organizations have signed up to give talks on what their groups are doing, whether it's in AI safety, whether it's in model architecture, whether it's how to curate specific data types or to map biological data into narratives and things like that. The group's interested in writing white papers to kind of advocate how this works and to explain why we want advanced AI to advance science, and to promote opportunities for visiting students. We have over 60 institutions that are involved. I'll describe them in a second. And there's a lot of interest from students to participate, and we want to find opportunities for those students to spend time at other institutions, whether it's in the US or Europe or in Asia. So the way that the TPC currently is organized, we have working groups around data, general data, data preparation pipelines, and then a lot of domain groups around biology, material science, and chemistry. And these are places where people are coming together to discuss how to find that data, how to curate that data, how to represent that data in ways that can be trained by models, and to deduplicate it. So we have kind of unique training things. We've got working groups around models, like alternative model architectures, and understanding performance, measuring performance, the kinds of processing to take a raw model and convert it into something like an instruct model or a chat model, right? How to optimize models for inference so groups can stand up big models to serve to their community. How to do model evaluation and safety and alignment evaluations. This is a big deal. Everybody's producing models, wants to convince their funders or their community that their model is going to be safe and reliable, and it actually is a non-trivial process for doing that. And actually how to train these models in runtime. And then cross-cutting things, really trying to bring people together, discuss things like AI safety and so forth. So one of the things that we're trying to do is build a bit of a research agenda around responsible AI for scientific use, and to get communities kind of organized around how to attack some of these problems, like alignment, right? Where you want a model that's going to be useful to you, that's going to do things that you think a reasonable model should do, and will not refuse to do things that unreasonable models should do. How to measure reproducible behavior, how to control behavior, and so forth. And how to build models that actually would comply with rules, right? There's a number of scenarios where you need a model, you might want to put a model into some use case where there's some operational constraint or some policy, and how do we get models to behave like that? And open research questions around which we imagine people will do thesis projects and so on. There's about 60 organizations that were mentioned. Hard to read, I know, but we have groups in Allen Institute and in Singapore. Of course, we've got vendors like AMD and Intel and NVIDIA. We've got Microsoft. Leon's around, but Microsoft's been a great partner helping with this. We have groups in Japan. We have a lot of universities, Stanford, Chicago, Delaware, Illinois, University of Tokyo, Utah, right? We've got a lot of national labs, Fermilab, Argonne, Oak Ridge, Berkeley, Brookhaven, and so forth. So a large number of groups. These are all people who have agreed to have their name as a point of contact for the consortium. So if you know some of these people, or some of your friends, go talk to them about this. We're interested in finding sites that will host meetups over the next 6 months. And so there's great work here, and we've already got a long list of groups that want to join that actually missed the deadline to join for the previous release. So with that, I will stop and see if there's any questions before I'm a couple minutes over already. So thank you so much.